Dallas Goedert re-signing with the Eagles was the final shoe to drop, I think, this offseason. Not a lot of big moves coming up, so it's time to create my first post-offseason depth chart right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Thursday edition of the show. We are brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. So the main wave of free agency is over. The 2025 NFL Draft is over. Dallas Goedert has restructured his contract with the Eagles, staying an Eagle in 2025. I think that was, after the draft, that was the final shoe to drop, like the last big decision the Eagles needed to make, whether to trade him, whether to keep him, to outright release him. That was the last shoe to drop, the last big acquisition we could expect, or the last big news we could expect before training camp, because I don't think, as I said on the show yesterday, the Eagles are going to suddenly go out there and, sign Justin Simmons or Rasul Douglas or Asante Samuel Jr. I know they were suggested as a good fit for like an Amari Cooper type. I don't think they're going to go out there and add that kind of receiver, at least not now. I think they want to give a lot of these young guys a chance first to compete, and then maybe they make a Dotson-like move in the summer, if not. But right now, after the Goedert news, I think this Eagles roster is pretty much set. I think maybe Bryce Huff gets traded at some point, but for the most part, all the big moves that were going to happen through free agency, through trades, through the draft, they're over. They've concluded. We move forward now to minicamp, to OTAs, to training camp. So I thought on today's edition of the show, it'd be a good time to look at a first mock depth chart for the Philadelphia Eagles 2025 roster. I went through the offensive positions and defensive positions and kind of took a guess at where guys stand right now. The new acquisitions through free agency, are a lot of these guys starters? Are they backups? What about the rookie class? How many starters could we get for players in year one? Let's dive into that right now on the Locked On Eagles podcast, and we'll start with the offensive side of the football. And when it comes to the offensive side of the football, I don't think there's a lot of question marks, at least at certain positions. Like quarterback, I think we know who the top two are. So I have Jalen Hurts and Tanner McKee. No more doubt Tanner McKee is the backup quarterback. I think it's an upgrade over what they had in Kenny Pickett last year. I actually do have, though, Kyle McCord, the Eagles' Day 3 rookie out of Syracuse. I do have him right now ahead of Dorian Thompson-Robinson on the depth chart. Now, DTR, as you guys remember, came through to Philadelphia from Cleveland in that Kenny Pickett trade. I like DTR. I liked his game back at UCLA. The Eagles met with him a couple years ago before the draft. I like his mobility. I think it's good to have a quarterback of that style behind Jalen Hurts if Jalen were to ever get hurt. Even if Tanner McKee's the starter, if Jalen went down, you could have some packages with DTR's mobility in certain situations on offense where he could be used on the field. So I do feel like there is a role for DTR. I would have been fine with him as QB3 if they didn't draft McCord. But right now, I do think McCord, if it's just a straight-up battle for that third spot in training camp, even playing field, and the Eagles aren't going to keep DTR no matter what because of his style, because of his mobility, it's truly made the best man win. I do think Kyle McCord is just an overall better football player than DTR. I think he's a much better pocket passer. He's got a stronger arm. He's more accurate. McCord does have some mobility as well. Like, he's not the statue in the pocket that Tanner McKee is. So, and the Eagles normally like to keep those day 3 quarterbacks they draft, unless they are just terrible, like Clayton Thorson, and force their hand. They normally like to keep those draft picks. They normally like to keep all their draft picks if they can. Even last year, look at Anais Smith. He didn't really do much to earn a roster spot, but as a day 3 pick the Eagles invested in, they kept him on the roster. So I think Kyle McCord ends up making the roster over DTR, but I think that is going to be a true open competition in preseason, and I am excited to see, how that really concludes. But I think McCord right now would be QB3, and the Eagles, I think, will end up carrying 3 quarterbacks on the roster. At running back, Saquon Barkley, obviously the starting running back. I have Will Shipley ahead of A.J. Dillon. I know Shipley's a little bit undersized. If Saquon went down, I don't think Shipley could take on the volume of a starting running back, but I do think from a snap count perspective, from a touches perspective, carries and receptions combined, I think Will Shipley will be that second running back that's most involved. And plus, A.J. Dillon, as much as I like his style, a physical, bigger running back, I wanted somebody like that behind Saquon Barkley because Shipley is a smaller player. If Saquon did go down, or if they do reduce his carries this year as they should, and they get other running backs more involved than they did last year with Kenny Gainwell and Will Shipley, I think Dillon's a good fit. But the neck injury is concerning. Like, he missed an entire season last year because of a neck injury. And for a physical styled running back, a neck injury is concerning. So Dillon was a former second-round pick that has shown some significant flashes at the NFL level with the Green Bay Packers, and I think he could be a really good player for you this year at a bargain rate. But if you told me as well that he could eventually become the Rashad Penny of this season, where it's a big name, a top 2-round pick that all Eagles fans know, but he ends up not playing a down for the Eagles, like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the outcome either. But right now, I do think he's the favorite to be one of those top 3 running backs. I have him at RB3. Montrell Johnson, though, hear me now, believe me later, the UDFA out of Florida, I really think he's going to turn heads in training camp. I love his explosiveness. I think he's got good hands in the receiving game. Montrell Johnson could steal a job in the preseason. I don't know if the Eagles are going to keep 4 running backs. I'd predict they don't. They'll probably carry 3 like last year. But I could see Montrell Johnson stealing the job from A.J. Dillon. But right now, I do have him as RB4, Lou Nichols at 5, and then Derek Powell, your other UDFA, another undersized explosive player. I think he's at RB6. Hopefully you stash one of those guys on the practice squad. But I do think of those 3 younger players behind Barkley, Shipley, and Dillon, I really do, like I said, think Montrell Johnson has a chance to be this year's version of Corey Clement or Josh Adams back in 2017, 2018. UDFA running backs a lot of the time can have success. Running back, I think, is the position that translates the smoothest from the college level to the pros, and that's why a lot of late-round picks, a lot of UDFAs have success at this level. I would not be surprised at all if that's Montrell Johnson. At wide receiver, right now, I think your top 4 are pretty set in stone. It's A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Jahan Dotson. I do think Johnny Wilson will be that 4th receiver because of his blocking ability, because of his size in the red zone. He needs to improve his hands, as I said on the show the other day, but I do think he'll be the favorite to be wide receiver 4, like he was last year. He has that niche role the Eagles could like to use at receiver behind Brown, Smith, and Dotson with that size. I think Ainias Smith right now is wide receiver 5, but I do think the players behind him could push him for a top 5 spot. So Avery Williams is at wide receiver 6. He's a running back receiver tweener. I don't really think he'll be involved a lot of receiver, but he's a punt return, kick return specialist. I do think he's going to make the team because he's going to be one of their main returners, especially in the kickoff game. If they don't want Cooper DeJean to return punts this year, Avery Williams is an option. So I think he's a lock to make the roster as one of those top 6 receivers. But Ainias Smith at 5, I don't think he's safe. I think he got better as the year went on, had that touchdown against the Giants the last game of the season. But the Eagles did bring in Terrace Marshall Jr., a former second-round pick that was a my guy for us on Locked On Eagles a couple years ago coming out of LSU. We'll see if he could turn into the next reclamation project of Howie Roseman. And my guy Danny Gray, who I love his speed, his long-range speed, came out of SMU a few years ago. The Eagles signed him at the end of 2024. If you told me that Terrace Marshall or Danny Gray, really good college football players, if one of them beat out Ainias Smith, I wouldn't be surprised. But right now, tie goes to the draft picks. Ainias Smith would be 5. Avery Williams, again, is this year's version of Britton Covey. Will not play a lot of receiver. Might rotate in a running back every so often, but I think he's a return specialist. That's a lock. And then Marshall Jr. and Gray are going to try to beat out Ainias Smith for that 5th spot. But I do think the top 4 are locks. It's A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jahan Dotson, and Johnny Wilson. I don't think this team right now is going to bring in a veteran like Amari Cooper. I don't think that's the option. I think they really want one of these young kids to win this job between Wilson, Smith, Marshall, and Gray. I think they want a couple of those guys to earn a roster spot. At tight end, Dallas Goedert, Grant Calcaterra, Harrison Bryant, Kylan Granson, and E.J. Jenkins. I think that's pretty much chalk now that Goddard's back. I think Harrison Bryant right now is over Granson because of his size, because of also his halfback playing ability. The Eagles are going to try to revive the fullback position, but Granson did make some plays last year at the Colts, so that's going to be like McCord versus DTR, that's going to be one of your just wide open depth battles in training camp is Harrison Bryant versus Kylan Granson for that tight end 3 spot. I think EJ Jenkins now, even though he was on the roster last year, I think Jenkins is on the outside looking in after the Eagles did sign both Bryant and Granson. Now here's where it gets interesting. The offensive line. Some of these guys could end up playing multiple spots. They could play guard, tackle, center. Right now, I think they have 7 players at tackle. Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. I do think Darian Kennard is a player that they're going to rely on as a depth piece. Kendall Lamb, they brought over from the Miami Dolphins, a tackle guard swing backup that does have a lot of playing experience. I think Lamb and Kennard are going to be this year's version of Fred Johnson, if you ask me. They'll probably battle for that number 1 backup job at tackle. And then 5, 6, and 7, those are those giant rookies with a lot of traits. Miles Hinton out of Michigan, Cameron Williams out of Texas, and Holland Pierce out of Rutgers. I could see one of those tackles getting tried out at guard. I think they could try Holland Pierce there like they did Mekhi Becton last year, just a giant tackle swinging inside. I think there's probably room for 1 or 2 of those guys on this 53-man roster, maybe 1. You keep Hinton or Williams, and then you hope that the other one you can stash away on the practice squad, as well as Holland Pierce. But maybe there's multiple guys that make this roster because Hinton and Williams focus more on guard or at tackle, and then you move Holland Pierce over to guard. So I'm really excited about those 3 rookies just because of the size and the traits. And guard, a traditional guard, the Eagles are a little bit lighter there compared to tackle. So I have 5 guards listed on the depth chart. Landon Dickerson and Tyler Steen are your favorites to start. I think Kenyon Green's going to battle Steen for that right guard job. Matt Pryor, the Eagles brought back this year. I think he's the worst case scenario starting right guard, but he'll be a primary interior backup. And then Trevor Keegan, the day 3 pick last year out of Michigan, I think he'll battle those rookies, Hinton, Williams, and Pierce for one of those final spots on the depth chart for the offensive line. But again, if you told me that Hinton, Williams, or Pierce, or even I would say at center, Drew Kendall, who I have as Cam Jurgens' backup right now, ahead of Brett Toth, if you told me one of those rookies at center or tackle moved inside to guard and beat out Keegan, or even Matt Pryor, I wouldn't be surprised. So I have right now, 12? I've got 15 offensive linemen listed on the depth chart. The Eagles normally keep 10 to 11. So there's going to be battles. Not all these guys are locks. All right, guys, we'll continue this depth chart. Predictions for the Eagles 2025 roster coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. We'll move it over to defense. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, this Thursday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena. And with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60% off, which is incredible. And it's not just for sports, but concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. The all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL in all capital letters for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We are doing our first 2025 Philadelphia Eagles depth chart predictions right here on Locked On Eagles. After free agency concluded and the draft, Dallas Goedert's back, like all the big moves that are going to happen, they've happened. I think the only things to expect now moving forward is a resolution with Bryce Huff. Does he truly get to compete with Azeez Ojulari and Joshua Uche as one of those top 4, top 5 edge rushers on the 53-man roster? Do they trade him? Outside of that, I really don't think they're going to go out there and sign a Justin Simmons or an Asante Samuel. I don't think they're going to go out there and sign Amari Cooper or a veteran wide receiver. I think this roster is pretty much set. Now, the Eagles are always looking to make moves. If, all these guards don't look great at right guard, maybe they could trade for somebody. If Keely Ringo's not stepping up at corner, maybe eventually they bring in somebody like Asante if he's still on the open market. If, at wide receiver, Johnny Wilson's not taking another step, or Anais Smith, or Terrace Marshall Jr., Danny Gray, I think they could eventually bring somebody in July or August. But right now on May 8th, I wouldn't expect any big move, big acquisition over the next month or two. Maybe they bring in another young tight end. Maybe they still do bring in somebody like Michael Mayer as an anticipatory move for Dallas Goedert eventually departing after 2025. But I think the only big move to come still is what happens with Bryce Huff. Speaking of Bryce Huff, let's continue the depth chart predictions, and we'll start with edge. Right now, I do think it's more likely than not that he's not on the football team this year. So I have Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt as the top two edge rushers. Azeez Ojulari, to me, is going to be that third man. I think he is definitely going to be the third guy in the rotation. I think he's the best player of the guys behind Smith and Hunt. Joshua Uche, to me, is that fourth man. Bryce Huff is 5. Now, if Bryce Huff got a true, fair opportunity to beat out Ojulari and Uche, if it's a battle of those three guys for 2 spots in that top 4 rotation. The Eagles want to normally play 3 to 4 edge rushers. Smith and Hunt are locks to be the top 2. I think Ojulari is likely going to be the third. If Bryce Huff, though, gets a chance to beat out Ojulari or especially Joshua Uche for that 4th spot, I do think he could do it. I mean, Bryce Huff, like Ojulari and Uche, he's had his ups and his downs. I mean, I think there is as good a chance he bounces back as Uche, right? I mean, 2 years ago, Bryce Huff was the most efficient edge rusher pretty much in all of football. So I do think, though, it's too much to come back from what happened last year with Vic Fangio's comments in the summer, then all the injuries. He's a healthy scratch in the Super Bowl. He loses his starting job after a couple weeks of the season. I think odds are he doesn't want to be in Philadelphia anymore. I think the Eagles, likely now that Ojulari and Uche are here, they've kind of tipped their hand that they don't see him as a fit anymore here. And he just didn't seem happy. I don't know. Maybe Huff's just a quieter, more reserved guy, but I don't know. The vibe was off. I don't know if you guys saw that too, but it just didn't feel like he loved being in Philadelphia last year. Maybe that's just speculation, but it just didn't seem like from the jump. And it might have been straight up from Fangio's comments in May or June where they said he's not currently the player we thought we were getting. That might have rubbed Huff the wrong way, and after that, he kind of started to check out. I don't know, maybe. But I think Huff right now is 5th because likely he's not on the football team in 2025. And then Patrick Johnson at number 6. I think they do likely keep him on the 53-man roster because of the special teams ability. They lost a lot of key special teams players this offseason. And then Antoine Powell-Ryland, the 7th-round pick out of Virginia Tech, 16 sacks last year, right, for VT. If Powell-Ryland stole a job too, if they trade Huff away and you told me Powell-Ryland beats out Uche, hey, I wouldn't be shocked. He could be this year's day 3 steal. One of those guys between Miles Hinton, Drew Kendall, Cameron Williams, Mac McWilliams, Antoine Powell-Ryland, one of those guys at least are going to be a hit. The Eagles had 8 day 3 picks. Smail Mondon, Ty Robinson. A couple of those guys are going to be legit players. Maybe Powell-Ryland is that player. But right now, your top 4, though, I think are Smith, Hunt, Ojulari, and Uche, with Huff, Johnson, and Powell-Ryland on the outside looking in. I think they do likely keep 5 at that spot. If Huff is traded, I would assume it's Patrick Johnson because of the special teams ability, but don't count out the rookie. Do not count out Powell-Ryland. At defensive tackle, I think it's pretty much chalk. Jalen Carter, Moro Ijoma, Jordan Davis, those are your top 3 in the rotation. 4th-round pick Ty Robinson does have some good pass rushing ability. I think he'll rotate in with Moro Ijoma in obvious passing situations. And then behind them, I think there's going to be a 3-way battle for that 5th and maybe final spot, although they might keep 6. Thomas Booker is the favorite to be that number 5 guy like he was last year. Then you do have Byron Young, a former 3rd-round pick for at the start of the season last year. Was a healthy scratch the majority of the year, but does have some good traits. They do also have Gabe Hall, who I really liked coming out of Baylor a couple years ago. Those 3 are going to battle for 1 or 2 final spots. Vic Fangio said in the past he likes to keep normally 6 to 7 players at this spot. I think they likely keep 5 or 6. Booker, to me, is probably a lock, and then Byron Young and Gabe Hall battle for that final spot. But if they kept 5 and it's just Booker or maybe just Young, I wouldn't be surprised. But Booker was a good player last year. Like, he was great in the preseason, and at times when he did rotate in on defense, I thought he was pretty effective getting to the quarterback. At inside linebacker, I think it's pretty much chalk like defensive tackle. Your top 5 are Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean when he's healthy, although Jahad Campbell I think eventually will be the starter. If Dean comes back a little bit too late in the season, he might not have a starting job to come back to. Like right now on paper, yeah, he's, when healthy, the second guy next to Bond, but I think eventually it's going to be Jahad Campbell. I listed him as an inside linebacker right now as the third guy. I think he's going to play inside backer more than edge, but as I've said a million times on the show, I think he will do both. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is LB4, and then Smile Mondin, the 5th-round rookie out of Georgia, is your 5th guy. His range and speed, his coverage ability, I think Mondin eventually could have a long-term role on defense. If not, he's just a really good special teams player. So him and Trotter Jr. are going to be 2 of your best special teams players, in my opinion. So those are your top 5. All right, let's wrap it up with corner and safety. At corner, 6 guys right now in the depth chart for me that are notable. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, those are your 2 corners that are on the field at all times. Keely Ringo, the favorite to replace Darius Slay. Adoree Jackson is your veteran backup presence. He's your worst-case scenario if starter on the outside if Ringo does not earn the job, but I think he will. Eli Ricks at 5. Very curious what Eli Ricks is going to look like in year 3. He was pretty solid. He showed some flashes as a rookie. Like, I remember that play he made in the slot against Tyreek Hill on Sunday Night Football. Eli Ricks is a young player. He's got good traits, good length, good speed for the position. Last year, he fell out of favor. He was buried on the depth chart behind Isaiah Rodgers and Keely Ringo. He was, cornerback 5 or 6? Yeah, he was cornerback 6. So this year, though, without Darius Slay, without Avonte Maddox, without Isaiah Rodgers, Ricks has a chance now to have a bigger role like he did in 2023. And the good thing is he does have outside-inside versatility. He did play a lot of slot cornerback in 2023, so if Cooper DeJean were to go down, they have Mac McWilliams now at CB6, who does translate, I think, well into the slot. Could be that Avonte Maddox backup, but Eli Ricks does have slot versatility. So I think Eli is going to have a bigger role like he did as a rookie in year 3 compared to year 2, where he was just pretty much a non-factor. But I think the Eagles are still bullish on Eli Ricks. So those are my top 6 corners. And then at safety, it's Reed Blankenship. I think Drew Makuba is the favorite to start. Sidney Brown's going to be a rotating in dime package third safety. Tristan McCullum, I think Vic Fangio likes McCullum. He actually played more than Sidney Brown last year on defense. And then Lewis Cine, who I'm curious about. They brought him in from the Bills practice squad last year. The Bills were using him a lot at inside linebacker. This is a former first-round pick out of Georgia. I am curious what they're going to get in his skill set in the summer. Again, I really liked Cine coming out of the draft a few years ago. I'm curious what they're going to get. If you told me he beats out McCullum, or if he flashes to where he's even playing as the third safety, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm predicting it's Sidney Brown, but Lewis Cine's interesting. Again, get me some first, second round picks in training camp, and I just like to see how they pan out. Even if it's, just a lost cause, like Terrace Marshall Jr. probably. I'm just always curious about those guys if Philadelphia can turn them into something that we thought they would be coming out of college. So Lewis Cine is, to me, an interesting prospect at safety. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, I have a few more thoughts about Dallas Goedert coming back. I really don't think we're talking enough about how much of a highway robbery move this is for the Eagles to get Goedert back at the price they did, because I do think he's a top 5 tight end in football. I'll rank my top 5 tight ends and tell you why this is a steal coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Locked On Eagles is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives business flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, multiple qualified candidates will be there to choose from. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork, UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. So as you guys know, I've made it very clear that I was not going to be happy if Dallas Goedert was not back with the Eagles in 2025. Well, yesterday he did agree to a reworked contract, a one-year deal, keeping him in Philadelphia through 2025. Originally, he was set to make $14 million this year. Took a $4 million pay cut, now only getting $10 million. Does have the incentive, though, of making an extra $1 million, so it could be up to $11 million. The money is now guaranteed, whereas the $14 million, there was no guaranteed money left this year. So the Eagles sweeten the pot in that way. But Dallas Goedert taking a $4 million pay cut, I don't think we're saying enough. Even though his market did not seem like it was crazy lucrative for other teams potentially wanting to not only give up a draft pick for him, but also sign him to a, George Kittle or Trey McBride like extension. It didn't look like he had that market out there. Even with that being said, even when you consider his injury history and he's a 30-year-old tight end right now, it's still a steal for what you get from Dallas Goedert on the football field when he is healthy. $10 million for that player. I mean, the Eagles made out like bandits yesterday. I really did not think they were going to be able to get that part of this done. I thought if they were going to bring back Goedert, they'd have to probably at least fully guarantee the $14 million, maybe give him more money this year, maybe sign him to an extension, because even though he's injured and he's 30, he had an incredible playoff run, and I do think when he's healthy, he's a top 5 tight end in football. We did our Eagles squad show today with Jason Murtis and Mark Farzetta. Make sure you guys check those out on Locked On Eagles. We go live every Monday and Thursday for hour-long episodes. And we were ranking our top 5 tight ends today. I do have 4 guys ahead of him. I think he's tight end 5. But Dallas Goedert is a top 5 tight end. You're getting him for $10 million. That's nothing. Compared to these receivers that are getting paid like $20 to $30 million a year. And now, like, George Kittle and Trey McBride are getting $19 million a year, and Dallas Goedert's getting $10 this year. I think he's one of the most complete players in football at his position. Mark Farzetta had him as tight end 3 in his rankings. I had him 5th, but I do think the only 2 players that have as much, if not a more complete skill set than Goedert at tight end are Kittle and Trey McBride. So my top 5 tight ends I had George Kittle number 1, Trey McBride number 2, I had Brock Bowers 3, I still do have Travis Kelce as tight end 4, I had Goedert at 5, but it was only because of the injuries that I had Goedert at 5. When it comes to a combined skill set of being an elite blocker, being an elite tight end in the run after the catch department, being an elite tight end in the deep ball, like constantly up there in the NFL in yards per reception, not just for tight ends, but for receivers as well. You combine all of that, his ability to make clutch plays late in games, in the fourth quarter, in playoff games. Like, he is such a good playoff performer. He's clutch over the middle of the field on third downs. He has great hands. Like, how many one-handed catches where he extends in front of his body, how many of those plays has he made? Even just in Jalen Hurts' career since 2020. I feel like it happens all of the time in the playoffs against the Giants in 2022, against Green Bay, against the Rams. Like, he's such a reliable player when he's on the field. The fact that you're getting him at $10 million this year is unbelievable. And I think it just props to Goedert. Like, again, the market probably wasn't there, but that's a selfless move. Dallas Goedert had every right to be selfish. Even with his injuries, he could have said, look, I was in Zach Ertz's shadow for 4 years. And then I finally get my chance to be the starting tight end. But you bring in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and eventually Saquon Barkley, and I'm the 3rd or 4th option in the offense. Like, he's always been the 3rd or 4th option in the offense. Maybe 2nd option, and I'd say in 2019 or 2020, it was him and Zach Ertz. Also Miles Sanders. So he was always a top 3 option, but he was never the number 1 guy. He was number 2 in 2021, I'll say. I'll take that back. 2021, it was him and Devontae Smith. But the majority of his career, he's been the 3rd or 4th guy in the offense. But he's never complained. The fact that he took a pay cut after the playoff run he had, when he sees a lot of these other tight ends that he's just as good at getting $19 million a year, like, props to Goedert, tip of the cap. Like, yeah, the Eagles guaranteed that $10 million, but taking a $4 million pay cut when you're 30 years old and you might not get another chance at a new deal. that's commendable. Like, that's selfless. It also goes to show just, I think, how much people want to play for the Philadelphia Eagles and try to win a Super Bowl. So, yeah, again, it's not all Dallas Goedert just being selfless. I'm sure a lot of teams were not willing to pay him, a $15+ million a year extension. But to take a $4 million pay cut at $10 million, despite the championship run he had last year, it's commendable. And the Eagles are getting him at a bargain rate because, again, I think he has a top 3 skill set in football at tight end, and I think he's a top 5 tight end overall. So I'm just still so happy. I'm still on cloud 9 that he's back. I just thought it would have been such a massive drop-off going from Goddard to whoever starts at tight end this year if you did not have number 88 on the field. The Eagles needed him for this repeat run, and I think if he can stay healthy this year, there's still a chance that he gets paid next year. If he plays like 15 to 17 games and crushes it in the playoffs again, it's not over for Dallas. I don't think it's likely that he gets an extension in Philadelphia ever. I think this will be his last year with the Eagles, but there's still a chance he gets paid by another team if he stays healthy this year and he balls out. So I'm rooting for Dallas Goedert. He has been an underrated Eagle for 8 years, and he's an instrumental part of this puzzle on offense. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. One more show for you this week, tomorrow and Friday, and then we've got 5 more shows for you next Monday through Friday. With the schedule coming out, we still got a lot of Eagles talk for you right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.